The equation by Asaro et al. Uses Atwater coefficients, which estimate the average amount of energy available in kilocalories per gram of fat, protein, and carbohydrates. The values are 9, 4, and 4 kcal per grams respectively. On an as-fed basis, the metabolizable energy as calculated by this equation for raw black cherry seeds is 5,462 kcals per kg. Similarly, the energy for almonds is 5,674 kcals per kg. It is important to note that diets in wildlife are consumed with moisture content, making this a good representation of a black bear's true diet. However, a simple conversion can be done to a dry matter basis to determine the undiluted nutritional value of the food. The dry matter basis metabolizable energy for the raw black cherry seeds is 5,997 kcals per kg, and for the almonds it is 6,042 kcals per kg. Two things to note are that the approximate analyses compositions are lower when on an as-fed basis, and the overall metabolizable energy is also lower. This indicates that the moisture content tends to dilute the nutrient value of the food. This changes the amount of food required to maintain energy requirements for the black bears. What about the digestive anatomy and physiology? As mentioned earlier, the primary diet of these American black bears consists of both animal and plant sources. Within these sources, black bears tend to select foods that are high in protein or fat content as they're higher in energy, especially in the seasons before their extended dormancy, so that they can store that energy. Black bears are classified as monogastric omnivores as they have fairly simple gastrointestinal physiologies. To digest foods, their GI tract must be able to break down plants, but with most of the focus on efficient fat or protein absorption from the small intestine. The overall gastrointestinal length of black bears is longer than a monogastric carnivore GI tract. This is not only because there is an increased need for the small intestine, mid-gut, protein and fat absorption, but there's also a greater need for bacterial fermentation in the hindgut in comparison to the average carnivore, as it would not need that sufficient plant digestion. The midgut to hindgut ratio is a lot greater in black bears in comparison to other various bear species. The midgut lacks a cecum and the hindgut is not hostrated, indicating the bacterial fermentation of plant diets are not specialized in black bears. The stomach is also simple, much like a carnivore's stomach. In comparison to a herbivorous animal who has a specialization in microbial nutrient production from plants, usually in the hindgut or rumen, the black bear behaviorally accounts for nutrient requirements as mentioned earlier. That said, the transit time through the GI tract is fairly quick. Additionally, black bears do not have the ability to digest chaff fibers, and thus the increased transit time decreases the probability of constipation or even colon cancer. Now let's move on to the quantitative energy requirements. Basal metabolic rate represents the amount of energy that the body needs to undergo basic bodily functions such as respiration, circulation, growth, repair, and to maintain homeostasis. Basal metabolic rate, BMR, depends on body weight as mass determines predation, food accessibility, and demands from the local environment. For black bears, the BMR is classified under the category of vertebrate eaters. The equation for BMR is 91.8 times the body weight in kilograms raised to 0.813. Since the average male weight is 135 kilograms and the average female weight is 70 kilograms, as mentioned earlier, the BMRs respectively are approximately 4,953 kilocalories per day and approximately 2,904 kilocalories per day. Field metabolic rate, FMR, is a method that measures daily energy expenditure, DEE, which is a sum of the BMR physical requirements in the wild and metabolic heat for animals. Researchers found that the FMR for polar bears is 2 to 2.6 times the BMR, and we will use this to estimate the black bear, DEE and FMR, as they are relatives. This quantity is measured using the double tritium labeled water, which measures carbon dioxide production of polar bears in the wild. It is important to note that polar bears are larger than black bears, and this value is a good reference point, but the true values for black bears may be smaller. Therefore, the daily energy expenditure for maintenance of a black bear would be approximately 9,906 to 12,878 kilocalories per day for males and approximately 5,808 to 7,551 kilocalories per day for females. For reproducing females, energy demands are different. A general pattern suggests that the DEE is about 4 times the BMR for lactating mammals. This equation can be used as a reference for black bears, and the DEE for reproduction can be calculated. Since lactation refers to females, only the female body weight will be used to calculate. The daily energy expenditure for reproduction is therefore approximately 11,616 kilocalories per day. As this value is larger than the BMR for maintenance, it indicates that reproducing mothers expend a significantly greater amount of energy than non-reproducing males or females. This value may also be larger than other non-altricial mammals, as black bear cubs depend a lot more on their mother's milk to fully develop and grow. Another DEE value is dedicated to daily energy expenditure on growth for juvenile black bears. To determine this value, first, the BMR for newborn black bears was calculated. Second, the daily energy expenditure for maintenance was calculated with the respective BMR. Third, growth of the juvenile bear was calculated using this equation. Fourth, the daily growth energy was calculated. And fifth, and finally, the daily growth energy and maintenance energy were summed. The daily energy expenditure for growth is therefore 436.2 kilocalories per day. The equations are all cited here. It is evident that in addition to the BMR, there's quite a bit of energy that black bears require for maintenance, growth, and reproduction. Food for energy. Now that we know the energy requirements of the black bear, we will calculate how much food the black bear must consume to maintain those daily requirements. Earlier, we calculated the metabolic energy of black cherry seeds and almonds. We will use those values to find the amount of cherry seeds and almonds that need to be consumed to maintain the basal metabolic rate and the daily energy expenditure for maintenance of the black bears. Let's start off with the amount of cherries and almonds needed to meet the BMR requirements. Here I have done the calculations for males and females by dividing the average basal metabolic rate calculated earlier by the metabolic energy of the cherry seeds and the almonds calculated earlier. For males, they require approximately 1 kilogram per day of both the cherry and the almond, whereas females require approximately half a kilogram of the cherry seeds and the almonds to maintain their BMR. Now the same calculation was done here, but with the daily energy expenditure values. In comparison to the previous amounts, the amounts have doubled. As you can see, males require approximately 2 kilograms per day of both the foods, whereas the females require approximately 1 kilogram per day of both these foods to maintain their daily energy expenditure. This once again proves that the amount of energy needed to maintain basal metabolic function is less than the amount needed to maintain the daily energy expenditure. And there you have it! We have covered all things about the American black bear, Ursus americanus, and I hope you learned something new today. They sure are an interesting animal. I mean, look at that face! Thank you so much for watching.